I have a fun paradox to talk to you about today, and this is one I'm sure you've heard in various different forms. They'll tell you that everything happens for a reason and has a meaning, and they'll also tell you that everything happens by random chance and is essentially an accident. And these sound like they contradict each other, and they pretty much do, but they're both true and they're both useful. So let's talk about this. My name is Rick Aster. I am the shamanic economist. So I'm going to tell you that a good paradox doesn't stop you from making a good decision. So there are times when it's really important to look at the meaning of things, and this is especially when things are the result of your decisions or the things that you've allowed into your life. And this comes up especially on the subject of relationships. When you've had a relationship that's done some harm to you, it's taken your energy. This would be a relationship that's exploitative in nature, or a relationship with an abusive person or with a narcissist. There's a lesson in that for you, and you can't get to the lesson unless you're looking at this and saying, there's some meaning in this experience that I had. And when we say there's meaning, that means there's karma. So you want to learn the lesson, you want to discharge the karma whenever this happens. But then that's the time to switch to the other meaning, because you don't want to be stuck in this past situation that's karma that you've already released. So once you've released the karma, that's when it's time to switch to the other point of view that's saying, it's just this crazy accident that this person ended up in my life. When you look back on it, you say, how did it ever happen? This came up today because I was in a discussion about how these relationships happen, and someone brought up a song I wrote, song Steal Your Light and Run Away, and the second verse of that song says, who are these human shadows? How they lose their battles, and why do they keep coming around? And that describes what we would call energy vampires. It's important to know that if you have an energy vampire in your life, it's not really because of something you did, it's because of the nature of energy vampires and the way they look for targets, and the fact that they picked you as a target doesn't really mean anything about you because they could pick anyone. So it is all this big accident when you look at it that way. Well, so you want to look at it that way when you're ready to release it, when you're ready to forget about it, when you say, this is something that happened to me, but it doesn't make any sense and it's not part of my present experience anymore. As I'm recording this, it is the winter solstice here, the winter solstice, a time when we look at things that are out of balance and look how to turn that around and come back into balance. And so it's a good time to be thinking about this. If you spent a long time thinking about a problematic relationship, or maybe with your mother and father issues from parents who treated you in an abusive way when you were growing up, at some point you're ready to say, that whole experience doesn't make any sense. It's not really part of where I am now, what I stand for, what I'm trying to do. It's not that automatic to release this kind of thing, but to help you get to that point, you can look at it in all its randomness and say, how did that ever happen? And it makes it easier to let it go, to say that if you say that was all an accident, I don't see even how it happened. Now, this applies to exploitative relationships, but it applies in almost the exact same way to clutter, which is another of my recurring topics here. you can say that every possession you've ever owned came into your life for a reason and has something to teach you. And you can also say that for the most part, the possessions that you own came to you by random chance, by accident. And it's easy to explain both, but let's look at the accidental part of it. A lot of these things were given to you by processes that you don't understand and didn't control. Or in my case, a lot of my things were clearance items. I just happened to be in a store during a clearance sale and see a particular thing and bring it home. You can analyze that and figure out how that happened systematically and why it was an expression of who I was at the time or who I am now even. But you can also look at that and say, well, that was pretty much an accident. I could just as easily have gone into a different store, seen different clearance items on sale, come home with a different kind of item, maybe learned a different lesson from it. But so we want to learn the lessons from the things we own, especially as we're looking at them and saying, why do I even have this? I don't use it for anything. If you're not using something, the best thing is if you can learn the lesson from it and then get rid of it in one way or another. But it's hard to get rid of something if you say, well, this is here for a purpose and a reason. Much easier to get rid of it if you say, this is something I own completely by accident. I can't even explain how I came to have it, and it doesn't make any sense based on who I am now, where I am, and where I'm going from here. So to sum up, there are these 2 points of view. Everything happens for a reason, and everything happens by random chance. And use everything happens for a reason when you're learning the lesson, when you're working through the karma. But then as soon as you've done that, you can immediately switch to this thing happened by random chance. It's basically an accident. And that makes it easier for you to release that experience, to put it behind you, stop thinking about it, leave the past in the past. So that's a paradox. That's how to use it to your advantage. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens by random chance. Start with the first point of view, and then when you're ready, you switch to the second one, and you're done.